All right, and we're live, and as you can see, you cannot see me. In fact, I don't think there's a thumbnail. I was trying to edit the video thumbnail for this so that I would have something on the screen besides a camera with a slash through it, but that was unsuccessful. As you probably already know, I'm not the most technically savvy, so when I discovered that I I couldn't use my camera, had a bit of a problem. I'm still looking into it. Hopefully by the next live stream, I'll at least hi Tower Time. I'll at least be able to have some sort of thumbnail or avatar replacing the video footage. But yeah. Oh, thanks. Hi Scott. Hi Matthew. I'm glad that you can at least hear my voice. It's gonna look. The thumbnail is going to look horrible on this, but then again, the thumbnail for all of the past live streams for the past 6 or 7 months have pretty much looked the same, except for those where I was using my camera phone. So there's not much. It's not that much of a downgrade, to be honest. Hi, GW. For those of you who are more technically proficient, feel free to offer advice as to why my camera is not working and how to fix that. I thought it was originally just on StreamYard because I was using StreamYard last weekend, and that was the first time I realized that my camera had been deactivated or canceled. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure why. I'm still puzzling over that. But it appears it's a computer thing. It's not just StreamYard. I don't have a working camera for YouTube. Oh, really? That's interesting. An audio YouTube video also from House Church. I actually don't mind the audio only version. I just wish that I had something. Usually when there's an audio only version, you have some sort of picture, some sort of still that replaces the camera footage, the live footage. You have something there so that later on when you look at the thumbnail, there's something to look at. This is just a blank or almost blank gray screen. It has a little camera with a slash through it, but otherwise it's reload or unplug your system. That's one idea. I don't know. I honestly I don't know if I see. That's the thing. It's not YouTube. It's something having to do with my computer, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't. For example, I don't know if this is some sort of permanent thing that the camera was just disabled, and that's that. But I'm pretty certain, as far as I can tell, it's not YouTube, because I've tried adjusting the YouTube. Like I said, I tried even doing a custom an audio, what's it called, an audio avatar. I tried putting up a picture, and even that did not work. So I don't know. There's something with the camera. No, I haven't been to a dine-in restaurant. I've had I've had pizza outside and a couple of things in the locally, but I don't know if I would necessarily go to a dine-in restaurant. I mean, I've been inside places for takeout, but I've not done the dine-in thing. It's kind of interesting. Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo, also known as Governor Meatball, or Fredo's brother, just said that movie theaters can reopen at 25% capacity. Tim, hi. Oh, hey, Tim. Good to see you. Update drivers. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you need to, you need to break down even seemingly simple advice like that. You need to break it down into more digestible chunks for my technically illiterate brain to understand. I know what drivers are, but um, it might have something to do with the updates, honestly, because I'm always deferring whenever I get a message that says, updates ready, you have to I'm always clicking no. And that might be the explanation, which, if it is, that's actually seemingly easy to resolve. But if it's not that, then I have to do some real research to find out why. Because it happened last weekend, last Saturday specifically. So this has been going on for at least 7 days, maybe more. That's probably well, that's one of the downsides of being really lazy about doing YouTube updates of live streaming. If you put it off for several weeks, then something like this you're just not going to be aware of. I mean, it came to my attention because I was on a podcast last weekend, and the host pointed it out to me, although he didn't need to, because I was aware of it even before I got into the studio. I saw the little camera with the slash, and I realized something was amiss. Well, I mean, I don't. In terms of Windows, I'm not even. I'm not even really using Windows, but I know what you mean. I think I am sub to that channel. I'm not certain, but I've definitely seen some of his services. Um, that weird Japanese restaurant. It's funny. I'm not a huge fan of Japanese food, probably just because I don't really like seafood. I mean, there's some things like salmon, caviar. I do eat tuna, but I'm not a gigantic fan of seafood. Even the seafood that I can eat, like flounder, it leaves a really distinctly unpleasant aftertaste. That's the thing. I can't get used to the fishy smell. That's one of those things I just can't adjust to. Which is probably I'm not a huge fan of Japanese food. Um, Benny Haas. Yeah. I actually do use an Android for my phone, which is suboptimal. Uh, I don't know. I mean, most of the people I know have iPhones, but I honestly don't know if it's superior in terms of the technology. I know that Steve Jobs, his emphasis was very much on style, and Apple products aesthetically are probably more pleasing than non-Apple products. I think that was one of the things, and they point this out in the Steve Jobs biopics, the fact that he had these very user-friendly interfaces. So someone who, but before that, you had to be a real tech geek if you wanted to delve really deeply into computers, into computer science. You had to have a certain technical mindset, um, in relation to problem solving. And I think Steve Jobs and his conceit with Apple was that he could make this he could make this technology accessible to people who weren't really into computers. The downside is that you can't really repair Apple products. I mean, he made it impossible for people who did have that technical savvy to go inside and reverse engineer and fix the products that they own. So in essence, you're not really owning your property. You're kind of leasing it from Apple and Steve Jobs, or now that Steve Jobs is deceased, Tim Cook. Yeah, that's a a really interesting point. You find a lot of those type of Christians in the new evangelical movement, and particularly new Calvinism. Uh, Although you also do find that a lot in the Catholic Church. There's a really good channel called Conversations That Matter. The guy behind it, John Harris, he just recently published a book about this subject, but his focus is mainly on social justice issues in the church. So if you go back and watch his podcast, and I think he has hundreds of different episodes where he addresses this issue, the insidiousness of social justice and how it's distorting the gospel. And there are a lot of other channels that also address this. AD Robles is one of them. The Fight Laugh Feast Network, which my friend Keith Darrow is a part of, they also are they like to emphasize this topic. And the problem is a lot of people want to, even though they won't phrase it that way, they look at these issues as a way for the church to become uh, more amenable to the non-believing public. So people who are going to Black Lives Matter rallies and who are marching in the streets and who don't really have any type of relationship with the church, they see this as an entree to get them into the church. And it's really no, Inky, unfortunately there's no video until I get this problem solved. Yeah, that's a good point. um the idea that abortion should be looked at the same way as social welfare policy, even presuming that you think that a Christian should support welfare payments or redistribution of income, which I would challenge. But even assuming you support that, they have this idea that liberal economic policies and other public policies should be raised to the same level or beyond the prevention of infanticide, stopping women from killing their children, and stopping abortionists from profiting from the death of unborn children. And it's a really specious sort of argument. It's very spurious reasoning, particularly when you look at the Bible and you look at the history of Israel the people they displaced and why why they were displaced, and then why Israel was scattered, and why Israel um, was dispossessed of the land that it had been promised by God. And uh, when the Bible speaks of the sins of the Amorites not being filled uh, after 400 years, these sins, the sins that were committed by the people in Canaan, and then subsequently by Israel, it. I mean, there were a multiplicity of sins, but the main sin was the sin of idolatry and unbelief. And when you look at what the um, when you look at how that sin was, what the embodiment of that sin was, it was people, men and women, or mothers and fathers, sacrificing their children to strange gods. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look up the article on Molech, you even see depictions of what the sacrifice looked like, and it was basically parents offering their children to this god, and the child would be burned alive, would be destroyed. The human life would be extinguished in order to placate these false gods, and it was often done in return for money. So you have people like the lead singer of Fleetwood Mac, this woman who just came out with an ad with an interview supporting Joe Biden, and she recounted her experience with abortion, and she aborted two of her children, and her rationalization is that otherwise there would have been no Fleetwood Mac, which was this ostensibly this pioneering feminist rock band, this amazing pop band that became very successful with two female writers and two female lead singers. Stevie Nicks, yeah, that was the name I'm thinking of. She's very popular, particularly among millennial women, I found. And you occasionally see resurgence in popularity for this group. I remember the first big one was when Bill Clinton was elected, and he used one of their songs, "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow," as a campaign anthem. But in the interview, she's basically saying that these abortions were worth it from her perspective because otherwise she wouldn't have had this popular female-led band that supposedly transformed the music scene. And she, of course, I mean, she alludes to other things that were happening. For example, she had a Klonopin addiction, so she was addicted to drugs at the time. And I think a lot of these things had to do with the relationship she was in at that time. But basically, if you wanted to boil it down, she says that she underwent these abortions because otherwise her career would have been ruined. So it's very similar when you see most of the justification for abortion in America. It's very similar to the rationale that people used for sacrificing their children to Moloch. And so this is a very long-winded way of getting back to my original point, which is the idea that this is some less grave sin, or that this isn't an important sin, is belied by the fact that it was a sin that caused not only the Canaanites to be um, dispossessed of their land, but Israel, which was God's elect people in the Old Testament, to be scattered and to have to be enslaved and taken out of their land. The Carthaginians, yeah, that's uh, they were another people that sacrificed their children. And it's kind of interesting because you had a lot of these revisionist historians try to portray the Romans as basically lying about their foes. The Rome and Carthage had this centuries long struggle for predominance in the Mediterranean. Carthage was a North African country that established colonies throughout the Mediterranean, and when got into a conflict with Rome, that they even had three wars: the first, second, and third Punic War, which ultimately was decided when Rome conquered them and salted the earth, basically destroyed or eradicated Carthage. Even though, I mean, Carthage, the city, in the region, I think still exists in Tunisia, I believe, but the civilization was basically wiped out. And uh, a lot of these revisionist historians will say, "Oh, Rome was exaggerating the the crimes of the Carthaginians in order to justify their imperial ambitions." And it's true that Rome wanted to destroy Carthage largely to expand its empire, but its Mediterranean empire. But they were not lying when they said that the Carthaginians were uh, sacrificed their children, because later on, the archaeologists discovered the sacrificial grounds in Carthage where they actually would um, sacrifice their children. So they were so even Carthage is another good example of a civilization that was judged for this. And I don't think you can expect the U.S. to continue to do the same thing and go on in perpetuity like this, where you have over 60 million babies who were killed because of Roe v. Wade, or since Roe v. Wade. Of course, there were abortions prior to that, but this was a decision that legalized murder in utero. So this was the decision that opened the floodgates, so to speak. Hey, Alejandro. Yeah, he appointed Ginsburg, and I think I think the reasoning behind the Democrats going ballistic against Barrett and Kavanaugh and all these Supreme Court nominees, I don't think they actually believe that abortion is going to be outlawed or that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned because of these one or two or even three Supreme Court nominees. Of course, there's a certain subset of the feminist movement, people who have been so indoctrinated into this um just bizarre ideology. They've been so brainwashed that I'm sure there's a certain fraction of the population that truly believes that's going to happen. I mean, like the type of people that you see in these clips, screaming outside of the Supreme Court building or trying to banging on the doors, uh, like the people in like the men Sodom or banging on the door of Lot's house. Like those people, I'm sure are thoroughly indoctrinated to the point where they can't think rationally about these things. But I think a lot of this, a lot of this opposition is really driven by the fact that they realize with a conservative, even a slightly conservative Supreme Court, and if Barrett is confirmed, you have John Roberts, who's sort of a weather vane, has kind of replaced Anthony Kennedy as the most spineless justice. He'll probably be forced to go into the conservative orbit if he can't shape the court. So, I mean, if you have even if you have even that scenario, you'll see the outer reaches of um, the left's ideological campaign sort of blunted. So the idea of legalizing pedophilia or enshrining abortion in the Constitution or slavery reparations, which the state of California has just passed a bill to set up a committee exploring that. That they so slavery, despite the fact that California never had never had black slaves and was admitted to the union as a free state. So I mean that's on a national level. I think the Democrats also passed that in the House. So like these really extreme kind of these really extreme attempts at shaping civilization to their contours, those will be prevented, at least temporarily, if you have a Supreme Court where where justices like Elena Kagan or Sotomayor, where their voices are marginalized. So I think that's the main reason you see you see this sulfuric counter reaction to the Trump nominees who I mean, to be honest, are not reactionary. They're not all that right wing. Are when you compare them to Supreme Court nominees over the past 70 or so years, but that's only because the Supreme Court's approach to jurisprudence has become so distorted. It does. But yeah, so that I don't even know how we got on that topic, but I think it was I was answering George Washington's question, but yeah, that's my thinking. I just figured I'd mention that since Amy Coney Barrett is in the news. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but for the longest time, I thought her middle name was Comey, not Coney, which shows you how meticulously I've been paying attention to the news of late. But that's really bad if communists have taken over your church. That's not good. But it's not. It's honestly it's not that surprising. A.D. Robles, I mentioned him earlier. He has a good video about this guy Eric Mason, and he does a really good job of analyzing of basically debunking the myth that that the social justice gospel and the gospel of Christ can be reconciled. And he plays clips of this guy Eric Mason where you hear him talk, and AD points this out, and it's almost interchangeable with the prosperity gospel. It's say this is why you need to make your videos. The prosperity gospel. The two are basically interchangeable. If you listen to Eric Mason and the woke church, I mean, he's probably the most egregious illustration. There are probably, I mean, I'm sure there are members of the woke church that are much more subtle in their application of these principles. But when you listen to Eric Mason and just clip his, bits and snippets from one of his sermons, you could stick them into a sermon by T.D. Jakes or Creflo Dollar, and it's basically identical. The only difference is that he's inserting more buzzwords and focusing on systemic racism and what we owe because of intergenerational debts. But it's basically the same thing when you break it down. What the woke church is pushing is no more theologically sound than what the prosperity church is pushing. It's just as ridiculous as someone like Creflo Dollar, who has a book. I'm not joking. He actually has a book entitled "The Holy Spirit, Your Financial Advisor." You can look it up on Amazon. But that's yeah, I do look like that. Yeah, they're not different from secular morals, and I think progressive Christianity is the source of a lot of these heresies, to be honest. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do something. I'm gonna try to figure out the camera situation. It might just be a matter of updates. Yeah, I know the line signifies that it's been rendered inoperative. The thing is, I don't know why. I'm gonna have to investigate that. This has gone on. The live stream is a bit longer than I expected, but I haven't done one in a while, so I figured I would just talk a little bit. Yeah, the guy who did Veggie Tales. Let me see what his. I think it's yeah, Phil Vischer and AD Robles. Name it, claim it. Yeah, it's AD Robles has AD Robles has a funny twist on that, the name it and claim it. But he's done a lot more videos about this than I have. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap up. I'm sorry to hear that, First Corinthians. I've had experience in Twitter and social media suspensions, unfortunately. Although I do have an active Twitter right now. If you go look for at oddlane13, that's my Twitter handle. For those of you, not oddlane, Gerard Perry 13, Gerard Perry 13. As long as they don't get big. But Gerard Perry 13 is my Twitter. If for those of you who are still on Twitter, I would recommend. I would recommend against it, but you guys have to. You guys do you. Oh man, yeah. Social media is kind of ridiculous now, and it's probably just going to get progressively worse. I might do another video on that. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching this this night stream. And if any of you have any other suggestions on how to fix the camera situation, I'm all ears. Those Kentile floors is just, it was a famous sign over the Belt Parkway. I forget if it's in Brooklyn or Queens, but there used to be a Kentile floor sign that I think was given landmark status or something a while ago. But Kentile Floors is just a famous Brooklyn highway landmark. But Anyway, I will see all of you next time. Hopefully, I'll literally see you because the camera will be working. But I don't know. We'll have to see.